Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. A couple weeks ago I posted a video where I talked about how, in my humble opinion, it may be too late to save Halo. Given 343, their manning, Microsoft's, telegraphed priorities. But I didn't just want to be pessimistic, even though my pessimism is internal. I truly think that Halo is struggling. But I also think it's important to highlight what they've done right. And so today I want to take a step back and we'll actually look at all the ways Infinite has improved, some ways spectacularly so, and exactly how much fun it is to actually play right now. Let's start by talking about why exactly I said it was too late to save Halo. Now, topics like this usually catch some flack from the true believers. Believe me, I saw plenty of, not maybe, lashing out at my video per se, but ideas, opinions, and topics like that on the Halo subreddit. And I promise you, I'm not simply a number company bad, Bungie good type of guy. I'm a little bit more nuanced than that. Rather, I'm mainly disappointed by the lack of social features, and that's mainly what I talked about in my video, right? There's a lot missing there that the OG games had, even Reach had. But that unfortunately is still true for Infinite. Despite the optimism I'm going to express here shortly, some things are not entirely fixed. Much of the criticism facing 343 is kind of like that. It revolves around things that may not be solved anytime soon, like the fact that their narratives tend to be endless soft reboots, the fact that the endless will never get explained. See what I did there? One word meaning two things. The lack of social features, as well as just the overall poor launch of MCC and Infinite. A lot of these things won't be fixed with Infinite, and they won't be fixed soon, considering, well, it doesn't look like we're getting into the Halo game for potentially some time, potentially, forever. It's no secret that most, if not all, of the campaign team at 343 was let go. They don't even support a multiplayer narrative anymore. It's just seasonal content. Din, I guess, my man retired. And that's disappointing, especially for someone like me who truly loves the in-game universe. It is crack cocaine to me. I want it directly in my veins. Okay, but how has Infinite improved then, you might be asking? I mean, this is supposed to be an optimistic video, and so far it's been 2 minutes and 34 seconds of negativity. Well, okay, let's jump into it. Let's break it into portions, bite-sized. When Infinite first launched, it barely had any maps. It barely had any game modes, no customs, at least customs that didn't work, no Forge, and this one was a big foul, no social playlists. Starting with maps alone, I cannot tell you how much the rotation Infinite has improved. It truly has exploded in size. Depending on when you may have stopped playing, I think you might have your mind blown. And yeah, you're probably thinking, oh, well, it's just a bunch of Forge maps. Yes, however, they've actually released a number of ground-up built maps. But even then, the strength of Forge means that if I gave you a blind A/B test between two maps, you might actually fail them. I would say a majority of the audience could fail those. The maps are truly impressive. They're not gimmicky and not as telegraphed per se. Like if you think about the Reach, Forge maps, some of those, like the palette and everything, just made it so obvious. They're not perfect though. 343 definitely struggles. Like I'm a big team battle guy. Every single map they have is your standard 3-path map where you have left, middle, and right kind of pathing channels. And then they also clutter it with geometry or objects that kind of force, like it's just like a bunch of intersecting paths that could fit a Scorpion and only. The idea of having like open terrain where there isn't cover is like straight up taboo to 343. Ironically though, like I said, there's a lot of Forge maps, which means a lot of the classics have been remade, especially when you talk about Squad Battle, the new mode that came out. These feature Bungie era maps, and that means there's wide open, which means there's really good vehicle combat, finally. And on that note, when we look at game modes, I don't think there's an aspect that 343 has turned around so impressively, and I seriously mean that. Infinite launched with no Team Slayer. It basically had small, big, and ranked multiplayer. And even though I still had fun, I found myself only playing BTB since I wasn't a fan of that 4v4 rotation. It basically forced you to play objective modes that maybe you didn't want to play. And while I enjoyed BTB, it also had 3 maps, and they quickly got stale, especially with some of the weirder kind of game modes. Like I wasn't a huge fan of Stockpile, like it just isn't that great. Compare that to today though, I mean, the amount of maps that have come out and all the options that are available to us now, it's pretty crazy. We finally got Infection, we have an abundance of extremely fun social modes. That's basically all I play is social BTB, whatever it actually is called. I don't pay attention, but things like Fiesta and whatnot. It's fun, it's easy, it's non-sweaty, which is good because I'm old now. I'm straight up boomer status and I can't aim for shit. I can rip some Modelas though and not feel bad the fact that I couldn't hit the side of a barn. But it's not just a massive growth of playlists. We also finally got the customs games browser. You know, one of the most frustrating aspects early Infinite was that customs were buggy and more or less just straight up broken. You couldn't easily match up with people. And so it's like you're trying to bring friends into the Halo universe and then you don't have a way to actually have fun with them. But it's actually been cleaned up and combined with our next topic has really improved. That obviously being Forge. If there's one thing 343 has consistently crushed, it has always been Forge. And yeah, it's extremely frustrating. It took more or less a year for that to be released, but I'm still glad that we have it now. It's insanely powerful. I even made a map using hundreds, no kidding, hundreds of script nodes for relatively realistic surface-to-air missile launchers. They chase the player, your goal being to destroy them before they destroy you. And yeah, it's pretty gimmicky, but it's insane to me that I was able to do something without needing to resort to mods or developmental kits. That said, it's not just everything fixed up to now, but almost, also the promise of soon-to-be released features. Now, this may sound like unfiltered raw hopium straight from the 1900s reserve, but believe me, 343 has shown a lot of actual honesty and promise to release things like Firefight. By what we're hearing around the internet, it should land soon. And not just that, but the ability to forge Firefight. And that has massive implications. I was never that much into the OG, Firefight style, right? Like, unless I was grinding credits out in Reach and it was like the #1 way to do so. But like in ODST 3, like there's never been a big fan of it. But the ability to use Forge, some seriously awesome, interesting matchups. You could build your own COD style zombies, like outright in Forge. Like, especially as someone who's big into scripting, like it's insane the things that you can do. There's so many creative folks around the Halo community. Once we finally get that, I imagine we're gonna have some really awesome straight up PvE modes. That's gonna be really cool. Next up, one of the biggest complaints that I've had, and I think a lot of us do, is a lack of cross-core. I've personally been standing my Reach kit that I wore back in Reach. I still wear it in Infinite, but it is nice to know that 343 has made it publicly known that that will come to Infinite. We finally got visors at a minimum with Season 3 some months ago, and I personally would not be shocked to see additional aspects. I don't think we'll get the full get-up right away, but maybe something like cross-core helmets or other limited variation of mix-and-match armors sometime in the next 6 months. That said, I do think it's important to note that everything is not perfect. Despite several fixes, desync still rears its ugly head. However, I personally feel it a lot less. But if you go on the Halo subreddit, you'll probably meet people who disagree, and I wouldn't be shocked if those of you in the comments feel the same way. I personally, though, felt like this time last year, I used to get it bad. I remember one instance I was flying the Wasp, and it was so atrocious when I launched my rockets. They would teleport to where the Wasp truly was, and then fly out to their target. And I'm talking like 500 meters away. Now, rather than jump out and let someone else try to use it, I just simply tried to kill people using an offset. It was not effective in the slightest, and I got blown up very quickly. But it was frustrating and very, very annoying, as something that happens in a game at that point had been out for a year. That said, when I've been playing it recently with the August update, I haven't encountered anything like that. Maybe once, like every little bit, but nothing so serious and egregious. Beyond desync, Forge, while powerful, still has issues. And this is kind of nitpicky, but it's something important to me. I've made and I've seen some others make impressively serious stuff, but the more you go down that rabbit hole, especially with scripting, things get weird. I personally find it mind-boggling and also annoying that you have an X and Y axis that start at 0 in the middle of the map, but the 0 starts at the floor, which you can't reach, and it's like 500 at the midpoint. It makes scripting really frustrating when you talk about geometry, position, and rotation, something that my surface-to-air missile worked with a lot, and I spent more time trying to figure out why 343 had done something in Forge than actually trying to build out a concept. That said, there's a lot of upsides though. The maps no longer corrupt like they did, so depending on when you may have stopped playing and you remember that, it used to be you could have a map corruption because you exceeded like a node limit without knowing, and your map would be unrecoverable no matter how many times you attempted to save, and it would tell you that your map had saved. But now it will actually handle that correctly. Not only that, but it tells you what the node limit is. No more like you paste some nodes and the lines just go off the side of the screen to Never Never Land. They also added ranks and normal-ish progression system, but we're still in battle passes. Some of you might be cool with that. I personally prefer the normal progression we had back in like Reach and so on. Reach I thought was chef's kiss, perfect. Progression feels good-ish. I personally don't like how the UI for progression comes on a splash screen after the battle pass splash screen. I kind of find that cluttery and dirty. Small nitpick, it would be cool if they were on the same one, in the sense that you could see your challenges and your rank progression all at once. Sometimes with Infinite, it feels like you spend a decent amount of time just clicking through all the post-game stuff versus getting back into matchmaking, especially because it doesn't happen automatically. That said, the fact that you can buy future battle passes is still true. So if you bought Season 2 way back when, you can play through that and earn enough points to get Season 3 or Season 4. I personally am still grinding through Season 2 because I've never played that much and I spent more time dicking around in Forge or Customs. Overall though, despite some of the pessimism I have about Halo, I don't really hide that fact, especially if you hang around the comments or in my Discord, or if you ever run into me in the wild on Reddit. But that's not to say that 343 hasn't made some serious improvements, and I think that they are entitled to a little bit of patting themselves on the back. It's not perfect, it may not be enough to bring life back into the game, and it very well might mean that Halo still isn't going to recover and come back on top, but it does mean that if you were a fan of the series, well, at least there's some abundance of fun to be had. If you're like me and you haven't played much over the last 12 months, I'd argue to give it a shot. You might surprise yourself with how much fun you have. And like I said, Halo in 343 still has a lot to work through. 343 has bungled every single launch pretty much up to this point. I don't know, and well, I don't really think they have it in them to save Halo, but I do think Infinite is at a point where it's genuinely a good game to play. I just wish we had this 18 months ago. Well, everyone, thanks for watching. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I'll catch you guys on Friday. Take care.